Chipped forward, looking for Musi to get it behind, and Musi's done it! Wonderful improvisation, wonderfully controlled. Ali Musi breaks the deadlock. This is the moment. It is the moment. TMD, Thomas Meyer-Giguère.
CPL Newsroom presented by Volkswagen. Week 12 was a bizarre one, partly due to Mother Nature having something to say, I think, in almost every game this weekend. Time is an illusion. Kickoff schedules are not real when weather has something to say about it, boys. But it was a strange weekend. 5 clean sheets, so a lot of strong defensive performances, and one absolute lack thereof, which we will get to. But just to run through the results from Week 12 very quickly, Saturday's only actual game was a Halifax 1, Vancouver FC 0, followed by a triple header on Sunday. York and Ottawa 0-0 in the rainforest, essentially. Valor 0, Hamilton Forge 5. That one took about 4.5 hours to complete, thanks to a couple of lightning delays. And then Cavalry Pacific ended the weekend. It was supposed to end Saturday's schedule, but the unplayable pitch on Saturday in Calgary moved that one to Sunday. And Cavalry took that one 1-0. Professional, 3 points at home that you move on from and you take. But we're going to start with Forge Football Club, who, before this game, guys, I was actually looking at the standings being like, man, Forge have only scored 14 goals this year. Like that felt a little bit low to me. So they said, okay, Charlie, how about this? They scored 5 goals on Valor, starting 9 minutes in. Brian Wright with the hat trick. And AGR, this was your game for us. We got to talk about Forge. They look incredible at the moment against Valor, and Brian Wright in particular looks like he's found a groove, right?
Yeah, that was the breakout, I guess, people had been waiting for, because the 2024 Player of the Year, since signing for Forge, had 3 goals in CPL play. He accumulated those 3 goals despite having over 6 XG. So it's not like he's not been getting the chances, which I think will have frustrated him, will have frustrated, Forge fans. Bobby Smirnotis, to his credit, has continued, to defend, I guess you could say, Brian Wright, saying that, he's done a lot of important things off the ball and up front. And I would agree, given Forge's record, right? It's something where, when you're winning, your striker's doing a lot of the little things. I guess it also helps that Forge is such a deep team that's kind of bought Brian Wright a bit of time to maybe find his form, but he definitely looked like himself in this game. Just 3 well-taken goals for the hat trick between, one just running behind, touch, a good striker's goal, the finish in the box. Those are the kind of finishes you dream of as a striker. And of course, a penalty, you always want to put those away. So yeah, overall for Brian Wright, I think it was a good boost to confidence, because as you noticed, made sure to reaffirm after the game, like, look, he's liked his game before this hat trick. He'll like his game after this hat trick. But when it comes down to it, they brought Brian Wright in because last year in the playoffs, they didn't have a Brian Wright because Kwasi Poku left. And what stands out is that Brian Wright now, of his 7 goals in all competitions, 2 have been equalizers in games, 2 have been winners in games. That'll really encourage Forge, because at the end of the day, they're paying him to, score a winning goal to send them to a league title, or send them into a final, or to help beat Montreal in the Canadian Championship, which he did once. And so they'll be pleased that he's at least scoring clutch goals. And now this maybe be a sign that he'll be scoring more goals. Yeah,
that's a great point. I mean, he does seem to be kind of showing up in those moments where they really need him. That goal against Montreal, I think, is the biggest example of that. But we know that Brian Wright's a striker who feeds on his confidence. He went on that crazy run with York last year where he was scoring and assisting. I think it felt like every single game. And when when it rains, it pours for him. Not to make another weather joke about this game that I know frustrated you, particularly AGR, because you were sitting at home just waiting for this game to restart. We eventually got through it, but I think that you gave Bobby Smirniotis some credit there, and I think that maybe he doesn't get enough for this team this year, which is crazy. I know he's the reigning coach of the year and widely considered one of the best coaches in Canadian soccer, but we've talked a few times about how many guys in this Forge team weren't there last year. 3 of the goals in this one, the 2 dynamic assists as well, players who weren't on his team last year, and already it feels like they've been at Forge forever. This team is 11 games unbeaten. Arguably, for me, this has been one of the more impressive runs of form Forge have had under Smirniotis and in their 7 seasons, just because of how quickly they've incorporated all these players. Definitely not starting slow like they have in some other seasons. So genuinely a very scary team. And now, if you look at the table, because they've got a game in hand, Forge control their own destiny to finish first place. Right? Obviously, we're not even at the halfway point of the season yet, but they're 2 back of Atletico Ottawa with a game in hand. So that gap at the top has fully disappeared, and Forge have their eyes on, surprise, surprise, another trophy at some point. So we will continue to watch them, but we had to talk about Valor, unfortunately. A couple weeks ago, it felt like they were back. They won that big emotional game at home over Vancouver FC. Started well last week against Atletico Ottawa. Didn't reward themselves for it. Lose 3-0, and then this is just a catastrophe. Alex, we're gonna run a clip from Phil DeSantis here in a second, but I want you to set it up for us because Phil kind of had some back and forth with you on this one. So maybe let us know what you were asking him, and then set up so we can roll just what Phil really thought about this game.
Yeah, well, I think the one thing that really stood out and I kind of highlighted in my analysis was Valor now have conceded 14 first half goals. And for context, there's 3 teams that's the most in the league. Duh. But yeah, there's three teams in the league who have conceded less goals, period. Forge have conceded 7. Like, they've conceded half the goals that Valor have in the first half. So I was just kind of asking, like, look, the first half goals, it's tough to be constantly playing from behind and to show your identity when you're chasing games all the time. Like, does something like that almost prompt a bit of an identity shift, right? Like something where you just look like what we've done hasn't worked. You kind of go back to the drawing board. And that's kind of where I threw it to Phil DeSantis, and this is what he got back to me.
Yeah, here's what he said.
200%. You could come in and coach the team. You said it all. That's what it is. We have to stop fantasizing here. We have to understand that the truth is 26 goals in 11 games. It's an absolute disaster when you think about it, because it means you have to score about 3 goals per game to try and win a match. It's not sustainable. It's not real. And at the end of the day, and I go again, it starts with me having to do my job, showing up every day and trying to make sure that we work the team well and we pass the right message. And then it trickles down to the guys responding and also doing their job. Today we didn't do that. Today we didn't do our job. We weren't good enough. It's been a few games now that, you look at conceding 5 in Ottawa, conceding last week again, a bunch. It's enough is enough. It's not good enough.
Again, Phil, tell us how you really feel. Absolute disaster, heard in there. Not good enough. And it's a good point. If you're in a position where you have to score 3 goals to win a football match, you're not going to win a lot of football matches, especially if you have been shut out in more than half of the games you've played this year. Right? They failed to score in 6 of their 11 games, which is not a recipe for success, I think, with Valor. So frustrating, very frustrating. They have a little bit of extra rest this week. I don't think they'd actually want it. I think they'd rather get back to it as quickly as possible. But they've got that Canada Day game against Halifax next Tuesday. So that's a big one for them. It's a very tough trip across the country. And it will be a pretty significant test of this Valor team. All right, let's move on from that one, though. we're going to head to the jungle for York against Atletico Ottawa. And I keep saying this because, guys, it was awful outside in this game. I love to complain when it's too hot. I'm a very pale person. I had a lot of sunscreen on. It was like in the high 30s, like touching 40s, and it was insanely humid for this game. But credit to York and Atletico Ottawa playing this game at 1 p.m. Eastern time. It was never going to be a fast-paced game. We've seen York and Ottawa play some incredible high-scoring games this year. I don't think this was ever expected to be one of them. So credit to these guys for kind of doing what they needed to. I thought York were the better team in the first half of this game. They couldn't quite, actually, they had some really good set pieces. Couldn't quite, get on the end of one of them in the end. And then Atletico Ottawa, the better team in the second half, a lot of possession, a lot of moving the ball around. They were trying to tire York out by just making them run around, which worked against Valor last weekend. But Valor were more interested in pressing and trying to win the ball back, whereas York, naturally in the heat, trying to sit back a little bit and maybe look for an opening. But Atletico Ottawa, Mitchell, we haven't heard from you yet this show, so maybe I'll bring you in here. Just Ottawa in general. I don't think there's anything really to be worried about. I think this is a game you kind of move on from. And Diego Mejia was quite happy with what he saw from. This is what struck me. Diego Mejia from Mexico said after this game that this was the hottest and most humid environment he's ever played in or seen a game played in, which says a lot, I think, about how brutal this was. But Mitch, Atletico Ottawa, I think it's actually quite a professional result for them to get on the road.
Yeah, it definitely is. And again, it's something I think we talked about last week, like 3 consecutive clean sheets for this Atletico Ottawa team. It's, it's that next stage where we know they can score, but on a day when you can't score, can you keep the other team from scoring? And this was certainly a day where, that was always going to be the case. There was maybe going to be 1 goal in it with, the weather, the way that it was. So the fact that, at minimum, they go away and they don't concede a goal at, a York Lions Stadium that has been a pretty tricky place for them over the years as well. It's not been a great spot for Atletico Ottawa. So, yeah, I think it's another professional result for them. And again, over the course of a season, and we know what they're trying to do. They're trying to chase a regular season title right now, and they're still leading that, even if Forge are, pretty hot on their heels, as we've talked about. Their ability to pick up clean sheets like they have been able to do recently is a really big next step. And again, it's young guys. It's young guys doing that, but also I think some smart decisions by Diego Mejia. You see Sergei Kozlovsky, maybe the heat getting to him a little bit, and maybe a little bit lucky to not get sent off with some of the fouls he's committing. Okay, good, you're off at halftime. Tier Walker's on. He can fill a role as well. So I think that there's some good management as well. And, the manager certainly not letting the heat get to him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was a smart change. And Diego mentioned it after the game that Sergei was on a yellow card. That's why he brought him off at halftime. Quickly, last week, I shouted out Noah Abatene's passing stats. They're even better this week. He attempted 104 and he only missed 1 of them, which is kind of a testament to what Ottawa wanted to do with the ball. Just not knock it around the park, make York run around, and hopefully a lane would open up. But that's exactly what Mejia actually spoke about post-game with how they're trying to defend at the moment. So here's how he broke it down.
Our best defense is try to play all the matches on the ball, to have the possession of the ball all the time. If you see the numbers is the numbers doesn't lie. So this is our best defense. And if you have the players that we have in defense, if you have the best goalkeeper in the league, if you have one of the best center backs in the league with younger center backs, you don't suffer a lot. So I think that this game not only we have a clean sheet. I don't remember any chance of the rival to try to score any clear chance. So I think that was a good match in all the ways,
He's certainly feeling good. He's confident in his team. He says he has the best goalkeeper in the league. He says he has the best center backs in the league. It's hard to argue with him, frankly, at the moment. He did go on to say at some point that his aspiration for this team in Ottawa are that they can be one of the best teams, not just in the CPL this year, but in CPL history. And certainly they're this 0-0 aside, they're on pace to be one of the highest scoring teams in CPL history, and they are a lot of fun. But anyway, let's quickly touch on York here. And what I want to go into with them is Ivan Pavela, who started the first couple games of the season before Diego Urtiaga really got in there. Urtiaga gets hurt. Now Pavela started 3 in a row again. I thought he was excellent in this game. He made 3 really good saves on Atletico Ottawa. But more than that, he was aggressive coming off his line. He was getting in front of crosses. He was claiming balls in the air. He seems to be kind of growing in confidence and figuring out when he can outmuscle attacking players. I thought he did a really good job of that. There were a couple kind of low balls across goal that he got in front of before Sam Salter could bury them. So I think really, really good to see a young goalkeeper, 20 years old, Ivan Pavela, kind of making a case for himself to be the starter even when Urtiaga comes back to full fitness. And we always love to see a young Canadian doing well in a goalkeeping position like that. I did ask Mauro Eustachio about Pavela after the game, and he had a specific shout out for their goalkeeper coach, Camilo Benzi. But here's what Mauro said about his goalkeeper.
We know that Ivan is part of this club and the future of this club. I think he showed in the first couple of games when Diego wasn't here that we can count on him. And obviously, it's unfortunate that Diego has picked up an injury, but we have full confidence in him, and we don't think about it twice. When one's down, the other one goes, and we feel confident. So he has been working very, very well, and fair play to our goalkeeper coach Camilo, which has pretty much he scouted him, he worked with him, and now he's polishing him up. But yeah, it's a kid that he's full of confidence. Obviously, clean sheets bring that. But he's a good stopper. I think he can control his box more. But at the end of the day, we look at him. He's 19 years old, and he puts a performance out like this in a tough conditions against a good opponent. And I'm extremely happy for him.
Absolutely, I'm sure he's very happy to see those contributions from a guy that I think wasn't quite expected to be a starter this year. Came in as a development player a couple of years ago, but had some experience playing abroad in Croatia, has come back, and looks like he's ready for the professional game. But let's move on. Halifax Wanderers and Vancouver FC. This is a 1-0 win for Halifax, thanks to just the man who does it all for them at the moment, Thomas Meyer-Jaguar. He gets his head on this set piece delivery from Sean Rea. It's building into a pretty good connection for the Wanderers. It's a great header from kind of high up in the box, honestly. But we were talking about this a little bit before this show. TMG at the moment seems like he is kind of the Wanderers MVP of the season so far, and arguably one of the MVPs in the entire Canadian Premier League. AGR, you've spoken about him a few times on this show, how much you love watching him defend and fist pump when he gets a clearance or a tackle or something. Just how important a piece is he to these Wanderers, and just how much have you seen him make a difference just in his presence compared to last year?
Yeah, I think, if you hadn't maybe been following this league as closely, you'd think he'd been part of the fabric in Halifax for years. You wouldn't have known that he just made a literal cross-country move from Pacific to Halifax this season. I just love how quickly he's come in, and he's been a leader with what he does, with his actions, a leader with his play, and a leader just, in key moments. Like that's it. He's stepping up with big blocks when the game is 1-0 for his team. He's stepping up with goals when it's 0-0, like it was against Atletico Ottawa, one of their biggest games of the year. Or now this, where you just, you need 3 points to, you didn't know it at the time, but Atletico Ottawa is going to drop points. You want to keep pace with Forge, keep pace with that top 4 with Cavalry winning. You get a huge 3 points. Like the leadership that he's bringing to this team, it's huge, because this is a bit of a younger Wanderer side, a bit of a, more inexperienced Wanderer side. But with the way he stepped up, he's just made everyone around him better. And that's been at the back, which has obviously been important with the likes of Adam Perlman, who I know Mitch has really enjoyed his play. You got Ryan Yesley coming in, and it's helped him to have a guy like Meyer-Jaguar in front of him. And then, of course, it's helping, even the attackers, the midfielders. They're all kind of playing with that bite that TMG brings, because you kind of it's hard not to when you see, again, like I've said many times, just how much joy he gets out of tackling people, making blocks. So for the Wanderers, it's been a big thing because last year they were a very talented team. There was no doubt about that. But, there was something about their mentality, something about just their execution that let them down and they missed the playoffs. This team might not be as talented, even as fun to watch in that sense, but they don't need to be because they've got a bit of that gritty mentality that sometimes you need. But they've still retained things that make them fun. They'll still have these beautiful sequences. They've got elegant attackers who will score beautiful goals. But over the course of a 28-game season, Canadian Championship, playoffs, you need your TMGs to lead you, and he's done that.
He certainly has. Yeah, I mean, it's hard or easy to forget that TMG was scoring these goals against Halifax at the Wanderers grounds last year. But I think that is a great point about the character of this team. And Patrice Geyser said the same thing after the game. Let's go back to the Wanderers ground and let's hear from the Halifax coach.
That's a game last year that I'm confident that sadly we lose. Even we generated chances. I don't know how many chances they had. I haven't looked at anything, but that's a game we lose last year. That's a game we won this year. And one of the differences is our mental Brazilian, and the other difference is Thomas. Thomas just loves defending, and you score the game-winning goal, so how else could it be anybody else, to be quite honest?
I love that honesty, and I love how aligned he is with you, AGR. I think we all agree on this year's Wanderers. Vancouver, though, tough again. Again struggling to put the ball in the net. Let's go back though, and let's start with their captain Callum Irving, who almost saved the day for them. He had an incredible first half for Vancouver in this game when Halifax were really, really swarming the box. But as is so frustratingly common, I think, with this team at the moment, eventually they crack. Callum Irving cannot literally keep everything out of the net. It's not a fair thing to ask of him, and the poor guy just looks so frustrated when that ball does go past him. But here is what Callum had to say after that one.
I mean, it's cliche, but you have to stick to what you're doing. I think at times for this club, our results and our performances have been poor. And I think when that's the case, you're trying to find solutions, different ways of playing, different ways of training, mental edges you can get. But I think for us, when you look at these games that we haven't been winning, I think our performances are actually deserving of more than what we're getting, and I think it's been a difficult run for us. So as hard as it is, I think we just need to keep the belief in what we're doing, try and make luck go in our favor, because you got to earn it, and then once we get that that bounce going our way and we take advantage of it, you gotta use that momentum and go on a roll. So that's kind of what we'll be looking for.
I do hope he found whatever he was looking for in his ear there. But it is a decent point from Callum that this Vancouver team does feel like they can't capitalize on pieces of momentum they have, like positive stretches of games, positive results at times. It feels like they don't build on it really, and they don't find the goal that they are sometimes deserving of, or they don't reward themselves. And I think that is a big problem, because you do see again that when that ball finally does go in, again, just the bit of the frustration, the sagging of the shoulders, and it just feels like an inevitability sometimes at that point when the ball goes in. That's kind of it, which is frustrating for this Vancouver team. But they move on. They go on to play Pacific next weekend in a very, very interesting game for both teams, where both managers will be very, very keen to get that win. But let's go on to that Pacific game, because they played Cavalry again a day later than they were supposed to. But this was a strange game, I think. Again, Cavalry kind of take the lead early on and then just sort of see this one out. And we'll start with the Cavs, the home team. Mitchell, obviously, it's Ali Musi that scores the goal for them very early on. But you kind of want to highlight the young players that are making a big impact for them in this game, particularly somebody like a Mikhail Gerasimenkov starting at left back. What's impressing you about Cavalry?
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've talked about. They've been missing some key players this year that have been very important to them over the past few seasons, between like Diego Gutierrez. You look at the left back options, Tom Fields missed a lot of time. Brad Camden's missed a lot of time, and they haven't missed a beat. And a big reason for that is because Mikhail Gerasimenkov's come in, been absolutely fantastic. He was stellar again last match against Pacific. And then, Max Pipegrass, we've talked about a few times on the show, has been excellent in midfield. And, it's something Tommy Gilden Jr. was talking about before the game. Like, they're almost at the 2,000 U21 minutes already, which would be the earliest the club's ever done that. And that's because they've been able to rely on these guys for big minutes over this season. And, we'll see how much of a role they play down the stretch. Diego Gutierrez did come back in this game, and we expect him to kind of be a starting player for them going forward. And we'll see once, Camden and our field come back as well for Gareth Semenkoff, although he's shown that versatility to play up and down the left side. But when you have moments like this over a season, like, you can take stock of, okay, if we put these guys in moments, they can absolutely handle it. They're game tested, they're battle ready. And he mentioned as well, like, they get to go up against, an Ali Musi, Sergio Camargo in training every week. And then when you're going up against Marco Bustos, Caden Chung, if you're Gareth Semenkoff, or Sean Young in the midfield, if you're Max Pipegrass, like, you're ready for that caliber of player. So that's why, there's so much success at this Cavalry side. And, those players have been so incredibly important to them this season.
Yeah, I do absolutely love looking at the under 21 minutes table and seeing teams near the top there that are also near the top of the real table, because sometimes when a team is full of young players, it doesn't necessarily lead to results. But we see Cavalry third in under 21 minutes, Atletico Ottawa way out in front with their under 21 minutes. And I do really, really like to see that. Tommy Wilden Jr., he was asked about these young players, these young contributions after this game. And here's what he had to say.
Yeah, they're growing. It's great to have Miao. He offers us something different. And I said whether we play him left wing back, or left back, he's so versatile on that flank. He can drive with the ball, but he also knows that the job of a defender is to defend. And I think he kept Bustos he's been one of the best attackers in our league, fairly quiet, and that's credit to him. I thought Max Pipegrass did the same thing in terms of adapt to the game, but it's great to see these young guys thriving in this setting, because they're around good players. So every week, Michal gets to play against an Ali Musi. Every week, Max gets to play against a Sergio Camargo or Toby Waszewski. So the training ground and the work being done between myself, Jay Wield and Nick Ledgerwood, I think it's now transferring into the game, and we're seeing that.
Very quickly, just to wrap up on Cavalry here, Mitch, you bring up another excellent point, which is that Cavalry are starting games well.
Yeah, they have 5 goals in their past 6 matches they've scored 5 times in the past 6 matches in the first 15 minutes in 5 of those games. And that instantly gives you control of games. Yeah. Scoring first, I think, in 7 of their past 8 as well. Like, that's a big reason why they're where they are in the table right now, is the fact that they can score so early. And of course, they hold on to those leads as well. But once you've got teams on the back foot in your Cavalry and you can attack in transition, like, that's the first step done, and puts them in so much control of all these games.
Yeah, it's a brutal combination. Like, if you are trailing from very early in a game against Cavalry, I don't know what you're supposed to do, because you can't open yourself up, because they'll destroy you in transition. They're very hard to break down because they're so good defensively, and they're very hard to play through in midfield because they've got a guy like Shamit Showman there. It's just tough. I don't concede in the first 15 minutes against Cavalry. That's what I would do if I was playing against them, but easier said than done, I suppose. Let's wrap up very quickly with Pacific. We don't have a clip on them, but again, just a frustrating one. What is this? 5 of their last 6 games they haven't scored? Is that what it is at this point?
Yeah.
And only 1 in that stretch, because they scored 1 against York in a loss last week. Mitch, it's the same story again with Pacific, right? Just very quickly, I guess, repeat yourself again on how frustrating it is to watch this team right now.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of mentioned it there, like, the fact that they didn't want to give up an early goal, like, that's kind of the recipe. That was like the main thing James Merriman talked about in his press conference, was like, last time I know we lost 4-0, but the big reason was because we were down 1-0 in the after 7 minutes, and that was the big key. This time they're down 1-0 after 12 minutes. They do a much better job of not compounding on that and playing a great low block and keeping Cavalry from getting another. But once you've taken that hit, there's no reason for Cavalry to really be super aggressive in going forward. They can just knock the ball around the back. They don't have to really search for anything. So that takes away kind of the easy outlets forward. And once Pacific don't have the easier outlets right now, and even sometimes when they do, like, when the offense has this little confidence, there's just really not much of a chance of getting back in that game.
Yeah, man. 9 shots and still somehow only 0.29 expected goals. If you look at where these shots are coming from, they're not dangerous. You're not going to win football matches if your attack is attempting from those kinds of positions. Just to wrap up on Pacific, they host Vancouver FC next week. I said it last week before the Cavalry game. That Vancouver game is must win for me at this point. Must score first. You cannot be playing. You can't lose 1-0 on home turf to Vancouver FC at this point in the season. That is a really big game. It does go both ways. Like, Vancouver need this game a lot as well. It's a derby game. These teams showed the last couple times they've played that they're frustrated. Vancouver FC beat them on penalties in the Canadian Championship not too long ago. This is a huge one that Pacific have to be up for. But anyway, let's wrap up there. Let's look very quickly at the standings and where we are at the moment. As I mentioned, Atletico Ottawa still on top, but not as safely so as they have been in the past. Forge just 2 points behind them with a game in hand. Cavalry and Halifax tied on 21 points. York, 7-point gap between Halifax and York on 14 points, but also a 7-point gap between York and Pacific in 6th place. So, pretty safely in 5th place at the moment. And then we've got Pacific, Valor, and Vancouver rounding out those bottom 3. All 3 teams in desperate need of going on a run sometime pretty quickly. They can start that this week, though. Here are the matches coming up. We've got a game pretty much every day. We got a Friday night game, that Pacific Vancouver. That one's also on TSN. Cavalry Atletico Ottawa on Saturday. Forge playing York on Sunday afternoon, the 9:05 derby. And then all the way until Tuesday, we got the Canada Day game between Halifax and Valor. Speaking of which, because that match week 13 wraps up on Tuesday, we'll be back with you next Wednesday to wrap up match week 13. So enjoy your long weekend. If anybody's taken off that Monday as well as the Tuesday, enjoy your super long weekend. And happy Canada Day. We'll see you next week.
Chipped forward, looking for Musi to get it behind, and Musi's done it. Wonderful improvisation, wonderfully controlled. Ali Musi breaks the deadlock. This is the moment.